As I said to Alex Wagner, you had a right to believe that you had seen everything in the House of Representatives until today.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Lawrence. You're right. I thought I had seen it all. And I thought I'd read about stuff way back yonder that we would never see again. I was wrong. History does have a way of repeating itself. And ever since, I think it was Joseph Cannon, was subjected to this kind of a vote. But even then, the vote did not prevail. Today, it did. So it looks as if we are now confronted with a conference that's trying to run the entire House of Representatives that's divided against itself. And that, as we know from history, will not prevail. So we'll come back in another week, and hopefully they will get their act together. I hope they will, because the country is looking to us for leadership. The country needs stability around the world and within our borders, and we ought to be providing it in a bipartisan way. We Democrats demonstrated last Saturday when we had the vote. That was McCarthy's bill that he put on the floor. It was not our bill, because we would have put Ukraine in it if it were our bill. We voted for it in a bipartisan way, more Democrats than Republicans. Yet, rather than accept that as a good gesture on the part of Democrats, as having done something in a bipartisan way, he went on the Sunday shows the next morning and started calling Democrats out for trying to force a shutdown of the government. You go figure. How could you do that? And he didn't stop. This morning, he doubled down and says, I will not deal with the Democrats. I'm going to go to the floor, take my chances with only Republicans. And we saw for 1 hour a House divided against itself, the Republican conference. The entire debate was between their factions. And we Democrats, like the rest of the country, looked in on it, disappointed by it, now forced to live with it.
Congressman, a week ago, the question was, would Republicans shut down the government? It turns out what they were going to shut down was the House of Representatives, which is now shut down for at least a week and, in effect, for as long as it takes to get to the next speaker, however many votes that might be.
That's correct. I would hope that they would come forward with someone who can work in a bipartisan way to get things done for the American people. Next in line, of course, is Steve Scalise. He has a very good reputation in the House. He's someone that I worked with at the Coronavirus Select Subcommittee, and I've known him for a long time. He seems to have the demeanor that's necessary to bring people together. I noticed the chair of the Rules Committee from Oklahoma did a great job today. So there are people on that side of the aisle that I think the public will be comfortable with, and I think Democrats could be comfortable with. But we'll see what they'll do. They seem to be more interested in making headlines than making headway.
In the past, I used to think someone like Tom Cole, who you just mentioned, the chairman of the Rules Committee, could be a fairly effective Republican speaker, but that was before Donald Trump, where Congressman Cole has been a complete supporter of Donald Trump. Isn't it the case now that if a Republican speaker works with the Democrats in any way, there are 8 Republicans on the House floor who will immediately vote to remove that Republican speaker?
Well, that may be the case. Well, I have a good alternative for that. The name happens to be Hakeem Jeffries. He is someone who has demonstrated over the last several weeks, in fact, ever since January, when we put his name up. The American people have been looking at him and the way he's run the Democratic caucus. And if you're going to have a bipartisan speaker, let those 8 join with us on the Democratic side and let's give Hakeem Jeffries the 218 votes he'll need to be Speaker of the House. Now, I'm saying that. I know full well that's as far-fetched as almost anything I could think of. But if those 8 people cannot work with their own, maybe they'll work with us.
Or there could be 8 others somewhere over there on the Republican side who no longer want to try to do this under this never-before-seen version of governing. You can't even call it governing that these Republicans are trying to do. How would you've worked with speakers before. You've seen them, congressional leaders, up close for many decades now. How would you describe how Hakeem Jeffries handled guiding the Democrats in the House through this crisis today?
Masterfully. He did it in a very masterful way. Hakeem Jeffries listens. And when you listen, you can develop a good response. And I watched him in our leadership meetings. He goes around the table, listens to everybody, try to find a common narrative coming out of their comments and the questions they raise, and then set forth a process that everybody has been buying into. And that's why you've seen our caucus function the way it has, because Hakeem Jeffries has demonstrated that he will put the people of this country above the politics of his party. Nobody is more diverse in political thought than the Democratic caucus. My goodness, we have various thoughts that must be reconciled. And Hakeem Jeffries has demonstrated that he knows how to reconcile differences, how to find common ground, how to keep the country moving forward, because we all know we're not a perfect country. We are in search of perfection. And that's what he is masterful at. And I think that he's going to make an outstanding speaker, if not within the next several weeks, certainly within the next several months.
The bipartisan action that was taken this weekend in the House extends government funding for 45 days starting Saturday. Those 45 days are going to pass very quickly with this leadership crisis in front of us. That challenge will be the next speaker's very first challenge, with that deadline for another possible government shutdown deadline looming.
Yes, it will be. And I would hope that we would take this week, that we're going back into our districts. Everybody will talk to their constituents, because I can tell them what they're going to find. They're going to find people who want to see the Democrats and Republicans working together. I would say that if we can put together not just the appropriation bills, but take a hard look at an issue that is really a problem for us, and that is immigration. Look at the other issue, voting. Voting rights, I think, are at the basic of what it takes to build a strong democracy. And we know that that has been imperiled here of late. So if we can do voting, immigration, and the appropriation bills, I do believe a speaker that can get us to that point will capture the imagination of the American people and will make a country that will move forward together.